All right, here we go. Add a shot for redemption. Notice I'm pouring the paint. I still have to use the spoon, I can't help it, but pouring it totally goes down faster. I used all of the same colors, all of the same exact paint. I think even in the same exact order as before. I've got Sherwin Williams Color to Go, Cheerful. I've got an orange, a red, and an off black that are all custom. I thinned the Color to Go a little bit with US Floetrol. It just makes it easier when I'm tilting. If I were blooming, I would not want to thin it. It needs that substance when you're blooming because you're blowing so hard down, but just dragging in a swipe, it's not as crucial. I can get away with a thinner pillow. And because I'm so new at tilting, that is beneficial to me. I think this is the first time in a minute that I did not spin. I did not spin this kid at all. So I'm just emptying out my cup because there's nothing worse than 1/8 of an inch of paint left in a cup that you have to figure out what to do with another day. I've got a decent sized pillow. I make it in roughly a rectangle inside of the rectangle, but I make sure that there's at least wet paint touching all of the sides to get me started. So, here we go. Now, okay, I'm torching. A cool thing about adding FluiArtCo to paint is that it's a lot more conducive to torching. It doesn't scorch quite as quickly. A lot of the other stuff in the Shelee method scorches instantly, so you want to kind of avoid that. This is a trick that I learned. I'm just running a toothpick through the paint, and it is the scorch test. Very unofficial, completely made up, but in the event that I accidentally scorched some of my pillow, dragging a toothpick across it all would catch any of that and shoo it away, so it doesn't interfere with my design later once it's pretty and I don't want to lose anything. So just a quick second of toothpick dragging can save you a lot of heartache later on. Pro tip right there. All right, here is my red. Oh, that's such a vibrant color. I want to do so much more. I want to do all of the things with this red. That TLP Grenache is just to die for. And I get way overzealous with laying it down. You don't need that much paint. I always lay too much color down, but that is okay. Next, I've got the orange. All of these colors have a tiny bit of paint mixed in with the pigments, so they still have a bunch of blingy, sparkly goodness, but adding just a teensy bit of paint, for me personally, allows for less chance for flocculation. I say that knowing full well that in my last one it was Flock City, but the theory is that if you have a little bit more pigmentation, it takes a little bit more effort to break up said pigmentation. So just added a little bit of black. Didn't want to get too crazy this time. I had a lot of trouble with black on the last one. I had a lot of weird shadows and so forth. So this is 100% a redemption pour. It is I can do better than that. And even though I'm all about positivity of myself, it's still really important to always push yourself to do better. You know what I mean? Don't beat yourself up about the things that you can't change, but always make the strides to do better. So in this little time that nothing is happening, I am loading Gold Cell Activator on the palette knife. Tonight's palette knife, once again, is a frosting spreader that came with my cake spinner. It works great. It's long. It's fairly narrow. It's got a bent angle to it, so where you're holding doesn't drag your knuckles through the paint like a putty scraper would. I have a lot of putty scrapers, and I'm always dragging my knuckles through the paint with those. So it's always nice when it's got the bend in the spatula handle. Moving that cell activator around so that it has, as you can see, the coverage that I want. Because I could just never drag it without having it how I wanted it first. And the way that the cells were exploding, I could have probably dragged it all the way to the end, but they kept getting smaller and smaller, as they do. That's a long swipe. You know, this canvas is 20 inches long, so that was probably at least like 16, you know. Wanted to give it a fair shot at success here. So gonna wipe off all the extra paint and add some more cell activator and do the rest of the little swoosh at the end. Little swooshy swipe. I can't believe how much faster and smoother this one was. It was, I almost want to say it was a pleasure. It was just so smooth. And they're never the way that I envision them when I start out. I always have a mental picture and I'm like, this is what I want. And FluiArt refuses to do what you want it to do. It does exactly what it wants to do. And the more you allow it, I guess, to do what it wants in a somewhat controlled fashion, the more fun you have with it, really. So I was going to start at the end and realized that that would have the buckle part of my spatula touching the part I had already swiped. So I just started kind of 3/4 of the way in and made a whole extra little swoop. Then dragged it all weird. That's okay. My cell activator from before was the tiniest bit thick. It's a couple of days old. I use them until they're gone. So if it's a little older, it doesn't stop me from using it. Some people have very strong opinions about that, but I feel like if it's doing exactly what I want it to do, then I will use it. So like I said, it was a little thick, so I put a little bit of extra Australian Floetrol in it, stirred it up really well before I started this endeavor, and man, did that make a difference. I have some cells on there that are the size of $50, just massive, beautiful, juicy poppin' cells. There was some places where the cell activator was a little, not thick, I don't want to say thick, it was just too unbroken in places. So blowing gently helps to get air in and helps to break up the cell activator, which is part of what activates the cells. So just breaking up the monotony of it will give you a nice opportunity for cells. Do you see those? Wow. It's nice to just be able to sit down and voice over this afterwards, because I can really appreciate what I'm seeing. So, I mentioned at the beginning that I thinned the paint with more Floetrol than I did in my previous pour. So, I would say maybe 4 or 5 parts paint to maybe 1 part Floetrol. So not a lot, but definitely more than before. I feel like before it was probably like 8 to 1. I say that again because the risk of thinning your pillow is that when you start tilting and stretching, your cells can get wonky, they can collapse, they can roll over themselves. There's a whole bunch of unfortunate things that can happen if you thin your pillow too much. So I'm kind of leaning it one way, leaning it the other way, turning it around, leaning it again. I'm taking my finger and spreading out thicker parts of paint so that the pretty parts don't fold over themselves when they hit a drier edge. So even though there is yellow everywhere, it's obviously thicker in the middle. So I'm bringing some of that heaviness out to the sides. So when I do tilt, or when I put it on its side and let it move, it has a cushion, a barrier to travel over without losing and distorting a lot of the shapes that I've got. And, you know, I can never resist an opportunity to get my fingers in it. Always need an opportunity to just go crazy. A really nice thing about adding Floetrol is that on some of those thicker pillows, I mean, the tinted Color to Go's are definitely never too thick. They really aren't. But on the thicker ones, like the white Color to Go, that man is thick. You definitely can benefit from having some Floetrol in it, which is self-leveling. Its goal in life is to become flat on its surface. And so it really helps do some of the work for you. If you have an area that just refuses to move, but you know you get enough paint off so that it won't crack when it dries. You know, like if you did all of the steps you know you needed to, having a little bit of Floetrol will make that part of your job just a teensy bit easier because it levels itself. Very helpful. Thank you, Floetrol, for leveling yourself. So just kind of back and forth, back and forth. I'm gonna tilt until I let the bend that's edging toward the corner, I want that bend to get almost all the way over there. It's gonna drop a lot of that extra pillow. It's gonna cover the edge. And then I stop just shy. When you set your canvas back down, it's always good to tilt it backwards slightly before you leave it, because if you just tilted all kinds of paint in that direction, just because you put it level doesn't mean all of that paint that's come forward isn't going to continue to flow. And you can easily lose a design you weren't intending to because you just set it and then left it. So I always kind of like compensate and tilt back real quick. You can't always see it because it's a quick motion, but I wanted to mention that that's a good thing to do. I was so happy with how it was moving. Some of the areas of color went in some places that were less than ideal, but by and large, it was flowing so nicely. The design stayed. I got cool halo effects in some places. The cells grabbed edges and then stretched. It was just an absolute delight. I had so much fun with this one. I can't even express it. It was an absolute pleasure. You can't tell that because of all of the manual touching up I'm doing, but it really was so much easier. And I'm doing my usual covering white edges. Now that I've started to tilt, there's paint that's fallen off a lot of sides, so I've got plenty of wet paint to just cover those edges, places where I'm not going to tilt to, so I might as well. It's obnoxious for you to have to watch, but it's part of the process. It's honesty, and it's also me not knowing how to edit videos better. So yeah, you're welcome. What I'm doing on that side, probably not necessary because I do have to tilt in that direction, but that's okay. It's always nicer to slide paint over paint than it is over a dry canvas. Got a little out of the frame for a second, but I was very mindful that I was recording this time. So nice. Oh, those cells. Those ghost cells on the edge that are just gold on yellow. Like a halo of red, but almost completely empty. So pretty. I just want a little bit more. Just a little bit. And that's it. You see I tilted backwards? Stop running. Stop. Stop. Sometimes you have to tilt a lot backwards because it is on a roll. I just can't even with this one. It's so delicate and just, oh man, so pretty. I love the black through the middle that's just got little bits of gold wisps throughout. The yellow and the orange faded into the red, like, oh, chef's kiss on this one. Mwah. And now I kind of think it's just touch-ups from here. Just getting little places. Always the tiniest touch-ups at the end. And that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, letting me be a part of this with you. If you have questions, leave them. I'd be happy to answer. Have a great night.